Hello and welcome back to On Air with Dr. Pete. I'm your host, Dr. Pete Economo, and I'm excited. I don't know where summer is going. It is just flying by, and lots of ups and downs in the headlines. Heart goes out in the U.S. We've had a bunch of flash floods. So those in Texas, even here in New Jersey, we've actually lightning strikes and floods, and so my heart goes out to those folks that were affected by that. But life is precious, and it can change in an instant. And loss of life is never easy, but the devastating news is a reminder that we have to stay present and be grateful for every moment. And that's why today I am very grateful for our very special guest, Dr. Evette Rose. She is an accomplished author, speaker, holistic counselor, trauma recovery expert, and the creator of Metaphysical Anatomy and Metapsychology coaching. So Dr. Rose has taught her trauma-informed healing in more than 43 countries. Very impressive. In fact, as before we got on, I was saying I haven't visited most of those countries. So, Dr. Rose, welcome.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pete, for that warm welcome. And I'm thrilled to be here with you today.
I'm so excited for this conversation because even though I'm a psychologist and most of my colleagues don't understand this stuff or want to even accept it, I love it. So this is like right up my alley. So welcome again. I love this. Let's dive in. So let's I know you've got a bit of a personal story. So what would you like to share with us about introducing yourself to our listeners?
So just to start off with the plot twist, because everyone knows me as, and it's funny because I didn't know this. Apparently, I'm called the Metaphysical Lady. I had no idea. So apparently, this is now my new nickname. And what this normally refers to is really that space between you and I, where things are happening, right? For example, when you see someone sitting there, you can't see their face, but you suddenly just feel this drop in you. It's like, something just doesn't feel right. Whether you feel sad or depressed, but you can feel there's a difference in your emotional state. Yes. But there's absolutely nothing to indicate or to prove to you what just shifted, what just happened. Why would I feel the way that I just did looking at that person? And there's no evidence to validate why I feel the way that I do.
Yeah. And just for listeners, like that could be like at the airport, at the playground. It doesn't matter, right?
It's that feeling. It's that instinctive response, some people would say. But it doesn't mean that there's something bad with the person. There's something wrong with the person. It's that we're actually picking up intuitively on what they're feeling. There's a resonance perhaps maybe in us, or maybe we're just sensitive. We're empaths and we can pick up what the other person is feeling. So there's this beautiful, this dance between us as humans that's taking place. And that's what I love the word metaphysical. That's why my book is called Metaphysical Anatomy, the word meta. It actually means that overarching space between you and I where something is happening, but we can't see what it is, but we feel it. And therefore we know that something is taking place. And this is where my curiosity got sparked. And I wanted to dive into what is this space? What is happening between you and I where there's no indication of you explaining to me or showing me that I should be thinking that you're sad, but it's a feeling and it's so strong and it convinces you that something's going on. It pulls your attention away from what was happening or what you were maybe thinking at that time. And let me tell you, would you believe if I told you that I had no intention on being an author? I had no intention on working with people or helping people, never mind working on myself. I wanted to become a crime scene investigator. I wanted to become a lawyer. And I studied it. That's how passionate I was. And so in hindsight, with a bit of a funny pun on it, now I realize I actually ended up still becoming a crime scene investigator, but of emotion. Because now I look at the crime that emotions leave behind in the human body and the damage that it can do if we don't manage it correctly, if we don't understand what our emotions are or how to read them, how to interpret them. Because sometimes we think we apply a solution to the problem, but it's because we don't understand what the problem is. We end up applying the wrong solution. So we become the hamster in the wheel, right? So this is where my own journey started with just being on my own knees, almost literally in figurative speech. I mean, no one really necessarily stepped into personal development. And this is not in all cases for everyone that's listening.
That's right.
This was my case, but I noticed the majority of it, and a lot of people will nod their heads. We don't get into personal development because our lives are fantastic, right? We're looking for something. There's a missing element. And I was one of these people looking for a missing element, but my case was quite severe. I was at the absolute end. I was an atheist. I wanted to end my life. I hated how my life played out. My dad was a self-medicated drug addict. He was a clinically diagnosed sociopath, and I was the only child. And he was a very difficult person to live with. I mean, to grow up with someone that has a neurological, chemical cocktail that is so different to yours, and consistently invalidating you and how you feel, and gaslighting. The sense of identity distortion that caused was incredible. Incredible. And so because of this dysfunctional foundation that I had, and growing up with other kids and seeing what life actually is like, that my normal is not their normal, I started questioning. Right. So always in the back of my mind, I continue to just observe and learn and stay curious. So long story short, the way that I cope with my life became so destructive because violence, abuse, and self-abuse regulated my nervous system.
Sure.
But what happened was, because that was my normal, right?
Yes.
We know when we look at neuroscience, when we look at psychology, when we look at the nervous system before the age of 3, we're completely wired in our nervous system. And that is what regulated my nervous system. It didn't have any other reference. So I had to relearn what safety felt like. To feel safe felt unsafe. Let me put it like that. So I had to relearn.
Yeah, a lot of people don't understand that. Where was that? Like, so when you first saw these other kids and realized that your normal was not normal, where in the world was that?
This was in South Africa when I had a friend who come to play at my house, and 10 minutes later, I just saw her mom pull up at the driveway, and she packed her bag because she was supposed to sleep over at my house, packed her bag and left. And the mom said, "I'm so sorry, but my daughter cannot come here again." And I was in tears, and I didn't understand what just happened. I had no idea. And that's because my dad had a fight with his business partner, and he threw the phone through the door. Like, the door was open, but he threw it from one room to the other. And for me, that was just a normal day. But she freaked out. She called her mom, and the mom is just like, "I can't have this." And I'm like, "What do you mean you can't have this?" So do you understand that split? That complete awakening of, that's not normal.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So that was where things really started to open up for me, because I started losing friendships. I couldn't go to other people's houses. People didn't want to associate themselves with me, even though I'm not my father. Yeah. I didn't end up, but I carried the brunt of his reputation, right? Course. Even though he was a high profile person, which made it worse. It made it 10 times worse. The charmer outside, and then the abuser behind closed doors. People wouldn't believe me unless they actually witnessed it themselves. Yeah. So he was my reference for what a relationship is like. He was my reference for what men are like. So now you can only imagine, this was my reference for what I grew up with and the type of partners that I attracted. But of course, the more exposure you get to the outside world, and this was when I moved to Australia, I started seeing, wow, women are respected. Oh my goodness. Women are treated with kindness. And I'm like, where did I just land? And my awakening was when a lady came to my office when I was talking to my partner, who we worked at the same company, and we were at a dinner, a company dinner. And that Monday she came to me, she said, "Evette, I'm really concerned. I need to talk to you." And I said to her, "Of course you can. What is it?" And her voice started becoming almost like a whisper. And she said, "Evette, did you know that you are in an abusive relationship?"
Oh, wow.
You could have smacked me over with a feather. This woman barely knew me. And I said to her, "Why would you say that?"
Yeah.
And I was offended. 22.
You were offended.
I was speechless. I froze. Yeah. And she said to me, "The way that he spoke to you in front of people, that didn't make you feel uncomfortable?" I'm like, "Can you tell me the exact moment?" And she talked me through it. And she had to really lay it out for me that that's not okay. And this was my awakening.
Mm.
There's something that she said, being this compassionate witness, I can't explain it to you. Like something in me just switched on.
Yeah.
And I started asking questions, and I started looking at things from a different perspective. And I kid you not, a month later, going from being an atheist, wanting to end my life, to diving deep into personal development,
Yeah.
right? Instead of finding how to end my life, I asked how to be happy.
Well,
And
but
this
when you
is
say personal development, like how did the personal development cross over into the meta? You know, because I want to get back into that space. I love how you put that space between people. So, like, how did it go from personal development to the space, to the meta work?
exactly. So what happened was the more I started to work on myself, the more I started to talk to the anxiety that was within, because I had very severe anxiety problems, like
Mm-hmm.
really, really severe. And the more I started to talk to the anxiety, the more I started to hear my mother's voice. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking, why is my mother's voice in me?
Mm.
And I started to realize so much of her behavior that I copied, her anxious thoughts, her anxious behavior. And the more I started to separate her identity from myself and started to work through processes where I took on, per se, really her anxiety and the shifts and the incredible changes that I saw in my life, I'm thinking, wow, there has to be more to this.
Yeah.
There has to be more. And that was the turning point. That was the point where I realized I felt like 10 out of 10 anxious. And then suddenly I'm dealing with something where a practitioner would help me through it by
Yeah.
identifying this more as my mom's anxiety that I took on. And then feeling the difference when it shifted and it's not coming back. And I'm thinking, wait, what just happened?
Yeah.
So this was copied behavior. You know, we watch our parents as we grow up. We can take on people's emotions. I mean, have you ever spoken to someone and you walk away and you feel really bad because that person was also feeling bad? Maybe they were going through something and you just feel really heavy that whole day. It's like you can't shake it.
Yeah.
We have all experienced that. This is
Well,
not a phenomenon. This actually happens.
of course, again, as I started, like this is something I definitely believe in, and one of the things I talk about a lot with my colleagues is in training graduate students. This is a hard thing to train. You know, you can
Yeah.
do the self work, but you know, I think about this just neurologically from the enteric nervous system. Like, how do I connect with that gut so I can really feel that inner space, which is really hard. And then you have to put boundaries in place. So, like to your point, like not carrying it, you know, so not carrying your mother's stuff, your father's stuff, but also clients, you know, because I know you've worked with over 7,000 clients. So I'd love to hear some strategies you have for not carrying all of their stuff.
This was one of the biggest challenges that I had because I would consider myself as an empath and
Yeah.
my boundaries were
Let's define
terrible.
that for people, because I think, you know, you and I know that very well. But how would you define an empath?
So to be honest, I'm going to speak from my perspective
Yeah.
because a lot of people are empaths, and it doesn't mean that everyone who are empaths necessarily had a traumatic child. Some people are just
Right.
very sensitive people by nature. I went the other extreme, whereas I feel I became an empath as a result of the trauma that I went through as a child, which means that
Okay.
for safety reasons, I had to become hypersensitive to what you were thinking, feeling. If there's a micro split second, shift in your eyes or your pupils dilated, I'm going to read your body language to see if am I safe or not.
Right.
Because I had to do that with my father. I can tell you by the way that he parked the car at the front door, whether there was going to be chaos in
Right.
that house. I can tell you whether he's going to break a plate. I can tell you whether he's just going to sit on the couch and pass out. I can predict that with absolute accuracy just by the way that he parks in front of the house or the
Sure.
way that the keys go into the front door, right? So just these different sensitivities, your nervous system starts to read your environment. And
Yes.
my sensitivity stemmed from, am I safe or not? And this is a nervous system wiring that you don't just shake off, right? I mean, I'm from South Africa. To this day, when I walk into, I'm 41 now. When I walk into a house or in a room that I'm not familiar with, the first thing I do is I push the door until it hits the wall.
Yeah.
To make sure no one is standing behind it. And it's
Yeah.
purely instinctive.
Yeah.
Purely instinctive. Not that I feel unsafe, but my nervous system is, hey, check that.
Well, I'm going to say, you know, I love that you preface this by saying that this is your perspective and that, you know, your trauma informed this. But I will say that the way that the brain works, it is about safety. So all of us,
Absolutely, but I just want to be respectful for some people
Yeah.
because not
Yeah.
everyone has made that connection, and it's a beautiful but delicate journey that needs
Mm.
to be handled with love, with compassion, and with great care, right? So
Well,
wherever it is,
yeah, and I love that, and it's evolutionary. Like, so for
yeah,
any listener that might be a little defensive around that, that is how we've stayed alive. It's what separates us as a species from others, that we have the ability to understand that from like our frontal lobe, understand safety, and then also how to like gauge it. So I love that you the metaphor of like pushing the door to make sure there's no one behind there. I think a lot of people will connect with that.
absolutely. And I mean, discomfort is normal, like you said, it's evolutionary.
Yes,
We're not going to evolve if there's no discomfort, right? So
correct.
if things were always perfect the whole time, we would not have evolved to the point where we are. We would probably still be chopping away with fire and, trying to speaking, I don't know what language. But to get back to your point, right?
Yeah,
To get back to the empath, the empath
yeah, yeah.
within me and how I dealt with that. So the first thing for me, what I noticed is that psychological boundaries translates into energetic boundaries. I
Mm-hmm.
noticed that the more I worked on my fear of setting boundaries, the safer I felt with setting boundaries, the less I
Absolutely.
felt traumatized or distressed by rejection from someone else, the easier it was for me to set boundaries. Because just to tap on that very ever so briefly, the fear of rejection is one of the biggest fears that people have, and they don't realize that fear of
Mm-hmm.
rejection is often bigger than fear of public speaking and fear of dying. Why? Because fear of rejection triggers the fear of dying instinctive response, and a lot
That's
of
right.
people don't realize that. And the reason why is because in tribes, we grew up in tribes. That's still wired in our nervous system. So if you were rejected from a tribe, you didn't conform and yes and amen and do what you were supposed to do, your chances of survival have now decreased. Your ability to
Mm-hmm.
find food, shelter, water, everything is gone, right? So it triggers a direct fear of dying response. And that's why a lot of people, I mean, there's many other reasons, but from what I've seen, why people can stay stuck in very toxic circumstances is because of a very primal fear. But that sets aside attachment styles. That sets aside what regulates our nervous system, right? So, like I
Yeah,
said, it's
yeah.
one of the reasons. And so I learned when I started to toss that fear of rejection, really worked on my self-esteem and not needing people's validation for my survival and for me to exist, that I exist independently because I choose to exist and I'm standing strong in that. This is when I started to feel less and less of people's emotions impacting me. And what I mean by saying that is when a client sits in front of me, I can tell you in seconds whether they have thyroid problems, do they have heart palpitations. You can feel all these things, but and within a few seconds, it goes away. So it comes in a wave and then it goes away. And the reason why it goes away is that the resonance for that in my body, meaning the trauma anchors, is just not there anymore. So now I can powerfully hold space for people and take them wherever it is that they are and move through it with them. And here's a tip for anyone else who are working with people and you are affected by their stress. The beautiful thing that you can do, and do this with a client because they will have no idea that you're feeling triggered and you need to
Yeah,
regulate and just ground back in yourself, right? Because you have to keep a poker face. You cannot show 1 microsecond of this stress
absolutely.
because you're that person's rock. So what you can do for everyone else is to breathe in your mouth and out the nose
Yes.
13 times. Last breath, hold it as long as you can. You're going to feel dizzy, drop into it. Feel the stillness come forward. Exhale out of your nose. And I promise you, 100% guaranteed, you're going to be 80% more calmer, and so will your client. And now what happened is called co-regulation.
Yeah.
Now the session can move forward in a more controlled and grounded manner, and you can stay more focused, because it's hard to stay focused when you're feeling stressed and your body's saying run and you're like, run where?
Yeah.
Right, when that cortisol spikes, the frontal cortex
Yeah.
pinches, and then we still need to stay focused on the client. So that's a beautiful strategy, I think, for anyone to use, so you don't lose face and you and the client can go into that beautiful space. Yeah.
I love practical examples, so thank you for that. And I think that's a little different than what people know, because it's always in your nose, out your mouth, and so I like just trying to mix that up a little bit. Especially the behaviorist in me loves that. I'm curious. I mean, so a couple things. I love earlier you talked about emotions are a crime. You wanted to go into forensics, and I feel like that should be a T-shirt. And because it's so real in some ways. Like I think some people, I wanted to go back to that because I think that's so it's emotions can feel like a crime. And I think that's why I love that we're talking about this empath thing, because as practitioners, if you're holding it, that's when it's really a crime. It's criminal for you to hold all of that emotion, and you have to find ways to let it out. So the breathing is one technique. What about like other techniques that you would maybe suggest for actually, how do you work with your clients? So like if someone's listening, like what's the process from like start to finish for you?
Pete, I'm going to challenge you now a little bit.
Do it.
Just a little bit.
I love
Because
it.
I've worked with atheists, I've worked with doctors, I've worked with the whole lot.
Yeah.
And a lot of people come and they sit in front of me and you can just see the blank stare and they're like, I don't believe in this. Now, here's the thing, Pete, if you can look at someone and you can feel something's going on, but there's no evidence as to why, you're feeling what that person's concentrating on, and somehow there's feedback coming
Yes.
between your body and that person's body. Now, why is that? Energy flows where your focus is. So if your focus is on that person and you can pick up what they're feeling and there's an actual visceral shift, there's a
Yes.
biochemical shift in your body, imagine, have you asked yourself the question and imagine what's going to happen if you're so focused on a solution-oriented state with an unwavering belief of healing, release, and shift,
Yeah.
that even someone who doesn't believe in you cannot touch that belief. What do you think is going to happen?
Love it.
Love it.
I'm with you. I love it. I love the process.
And neuroscience, it's called co-regulation.
Yeah.
That is how we co-regulate, but people don't know how to just through meditation get into that state. And the micro expressions on your face, all of this plays a role. That's why you heard me earlier say poker face, right? This is incredibly important. It's not that you're emotionless, because that person is going to read your face. They're constantly looking for feedback. Am I wrong? Did I say something stupid? Is she upset with me? Does she not like me? Does she maybe not like my shirt? When you work with people who are been through a lot of trauma, they're watching you like you wouldn't believe. I think a lot of practitioners don't realize how clients are watching us.
Oh,
so
well, for sure. Yeah.
That poker face, it is incredibly
Now,
important.
some people might hear that and think it's disingenuous, and I'm going to say it's skill. It is part of our skill. So you did say you're going to challenge me, and I will say that had I not already done my work, you would have challenged me. But because I really love that, and I'm a cognitive behavioral therapist, and so we are all about random control trials and efficacy, and right. And so one of my my best friend colleague, like my work wife, one of them, she is more of Freudian kind of psychoanalytic, which is all process based. And she'll say, you know what, Pete, if it works for one person, that's evidence based. And I feel like that's what we're talking about. Like this, you can't measure metaphysics, really.
Right.
Well, can we? Are there lights, or there are certain things that we can measure metaphysics?
Honestly, the only thing from my perspective, what we can measure is the results. Yeah. And if you consistently have results of helping people above 50% consistently, and the result stays above 50%, I think we're doing well. I think we're doing well. Whether it's pain, whether it's addiction, whether it's emotional trauma, whether it's chronic pain, I think we're doing pretty well, right? So something is happening. But the work is not just with co-regulation. You have to keep in mind there's bilateral processing also, that we use, and there's gentle meditation that we also use. We take the person back into the theta state, which is the programming state that we're in before the age of 7. So these states are all really important, that when brought together in perfect harmony in the correct order, the missing resources, what did you need to feel in order to have felt stronger in that moment? What would that look and feel like now? What do you need in your life in order to bring that in right now? Right? So they really truly is a process. This is not just like sitting there and staring at the person like until they get better. It doesn't work that way, right? So there is a beautiful process involved, and steps that we take during the technique to help people to get them into a really great place. Yeah.
So you talked about early childhood trauma, and I know you work with both children and adults, right? And so, how does that work maybe vary, for listeners to kind of hear? Maybe they're thinking about their child, or, how does it vary, the work between the two groups?
So for adults, of course, it's easier to ask the bigger, straightforward questions. But with children, what we like to do is we work with colors. So, we assess whether different colors are being used, what the emotional state is. And for us, when we start to measure as well for children, like when you feel really sad, how big is it? Is it like this big or is it like that big? So we really like to use visualization. So, something that they can connect to. And I love to work with the child's values and belief system. So I will ask the parent, what is your religion? Do you believe in angels? Do you believe in something? What is your superhero? And so forth. So children's imaginations can go wild, and we use that to our advantage, right? So, for example, if a child had trauma, we'll call in a superhero, we'll call in God or Jesus, whatever it is that they believe in the most that holds power in their life. We'll have a box. We're going to put the trauma and the stress in the box. We're going to put the box at the window, and they're going to come and get it that night. So it's really about helping a child to heal through imagination, because it really works.
It does, yeah.
It actually works. Yeah. And it's so beautiful.
It is, yeah. So I've also read that you said about like saying yes to life.
Yes.
And I wonder, there's a lot of that out there. And so, like, how do you put that into practice? Because all of us, if something scares me, you know what, Dr. Evette, I want to say yes, but I'm scared,
Right.
So how do you kind of encourage people, or like, how would you frame this yes to life idea for you?
In a 3-bullet point, I said yes to life when my emotions nearly killed me. And I had a stress-induced heart attack just before I turned 30. And when I realized the power of emotions, that's when I said yes to life and no to toxic emotions that I was trying to run away from. Saying yes to life was so important that it helped me to turn things around, to realize what I was running away from was emotions. Yeah. But that's the very thing that we need to embrace to be able to get to where it is that we want to be. Right. Yes. So emotions is the GPS of the soul. This is what's going to tell you what makes you happy, what makes you sad, what you want and what you don't want. If you suppress that, you're suppressing your voice. Of course, you're going to feel lost. No wonder you don't know what you want to do or where you want to be, because you can't feel your way through that. Right. So that freeze response, that phone collapse, that disassociation, it can become a really comfortable place with all those little endorphins that's going off when we're stuck in that place. But this is also what's cutting you off from where it is that you want to be. Right. Yeah. So we can assist the body if we can feel what it wants and needs. It doesn't speak English. It speaks to you through symptoms and emotions. When there's a problem, it's not failing you. It is working for you. You are your body's only purpose. It doesn't have another purpose. Yeah. So my yes to life was saying yes to my emotions. Was saying, yes, I'm listening. Yes, I hear you. Yes, I love you. And yes, let's work through this. I didn't see it as something that needs to be attacked or diminished or suppressed. It needs to be heard. And if you can hear it correctly and truly understand what these emotions are trying to tell you, I promise you, you will apply the correct solution and put it to rest. But we can only understand it if we receive it with grace and not through judgment and attack.
Said so beautifully in the ACT language, like acceptance and commitment therapy. There, Stephen Hayes would be so proud. It's it's like
Dr. Pete.
Yeah, I love that. I love it. So you've written a lot of books, but just tell us about the metaphysical anatomy. I think that's something maybe that listeners really want to. Yeah.
Every book is about is a part of my life. So everything has been my real, true lived experiences. And metaphysical anatomy was actually birthed working with all these thousands of people, noticing, my goodness, someone in Canada have arthritis in their left hand, and someone in Australia have arthritis in their left hand, but you have the same trauma. But you have different diets. You have different upbringing. You have different cultural values and beliefs. And I'm thinking, well, oh my goodness, I just met someone in Japan also with arthritis in the left hand, and they have the same trauma. I'm like, what is this? How is this possible?
So put it together.
I started documenting, and I put it all together. And someone told me, have you heard of Louise Hay? And I'm like, no, who is that? I mean, this is way 16 years ago. I'm like, who is that? And so I pulled out her book and I looked at it and I was thinking, I don't want to reinvent the wheel. So I asked the question, what is missing?
Yes.
And it's the trauma, it's the patterns. What is perpetuating? What is locking in these behavioral patterns and symptoms in the body that's causing the person to not shift.
Yeah.
And that became the main focus. And so that's where I started to pull all the data from all the people that I started working on. And I'm an observer. I people watch, right? I love to sit there and just watch people. And you watch the body language, the way they talk and all of that. And it just gives you this whole story.
Sure.
Of what could potentially be happening for that person, not as a factual fact, but just what could potentially be going on. Yeah. The body has a way of communicating.
Absolutely.
And it normally doesn't lie. There's no purpose or there's no reason for it to lie. Its sole purpose is to keep you alive. Why would it lie?
Yeah. And you can't lie to yourself either. No. Well, that is so beautiful. I mean, they say time flies when you're having fun. I know. I just can't believe that we're already at the end. This is so wild. I know there's so much more, but this was, hopefully listeners heard this. I mean, Dr. Evette, you're so wonderful, and this is really good work and important work. And I know that you've thousands of people that you've helped, and I know listeners are also going to want to learn more about your books and your website. We'll have all that in the show notes. But where would they go to find you?
They can find me at metaphysicalanatomy.com or Dr. Evette Rose Official on Instagram and evettevideos.com for YouTube.
Wonderful. So yeah, we'll have all that in the show notes, and head over to that because this is really important stuff. And especially if you are listening thinking this is not real, or even more so for you then is what I would say. Because I think if there's not something I've learned in my process, that this is really for everybody. It's just a matter of when you're ready for it. So.
The books are also being used in universities and hospitals and everywhere. So, yes.
As well they should be.
Something's going on, Dr. Pete. Something's going on.
Something is going on. Well, it's this blend of East and West, and I think it's time. It's time. So yes. Thank you for bringing that to us, and thank you so much for being here today and sharing yourself with us, and thank you. I really appreciate it. So, and for the listeners, your support is always appreciated. So like, follow, and share. Everything's at Official Dr. Pete, and I'll see you back here next week. Until then, spread a little kindness and stay well.